This is Eldon McArthur. I was the district governor in '86 and '87, and this was the beginning of the Polio Plus program. And that year we decided to do things like getting rid of polio. And at that time there was 750 new cases of polio every day somewhere in the world. And that's a lot of polio cases. And since it had been in our area, and as long as I can remember, when my kids got runny noses or something like that, Mom and I just worried to death. And we had one boy from Leeds that ended up in an iron lung. We had a lot of them that are crippled because of polio. So we were ready for that program to come in. And this program you're going to see is the program of the district's governors that have been in this district. It was 542 when we started, but it's now 5420. They've added zeros because Rotary's growing and it's moving around the world. It's becoming more widely known because it's doing good. And these men that have followed me are men that I've pushed a little more outside of the Wasatch Front, because we are, everybody in Utah that belongs to this club are Rotarian. And we've tried to keep them increased and growing in clubs, new clubs. We've worked on new clubs and we've worked on membership to try to get people in, because this is a program that can literally change the world if it's utilized right. And we've had, in our home, we've had this youth exchange. I've been in the youth exchange program for probably 15 years already, and I've had them from all over the world live in my home. And it's been one of the best things that ever happened. I had two daughters that went. One went to Japan and one went to the Philippines. And you know what the MacArthur name meant when you got to either one of those countries. And my children had a wonderful program. And I think that this is a good thing for the world. If all the families in the world could send a child abroad and accept a child from somewhere abroad to live in their homes, it would be the greatest thing that ever happened. That we wouldn't need the kind of crap that's going on in the world today. It wouldn't be here, because love is the answer to the entire world's problem. I had students that lived in my home from the Philippines, from Brazil, from Mexico, from Japan. I was over the Southeast Asia program for the world for our district, and I contacted lots of different countries over there. One daughter went to Japan, and she was the outstanding student in the entire program that year. The club down in Fukuoka, Japan, she went to Yanagawa and Okawa, two clubs that teamed up to host her. And they would never have another United States student with them. But after she was there for a year, they decided that, hey, we've got something here. And she was treated in an all-girls school. She graduated from high school. She also graduated from Dixie the same year. But she had her studies all done, and she did all she had to do was spend the time. So she graduated from two high schools that year, one at Fukuoka and one at Dixie. And she came home her picture hangs with all the great models of Japan because she lived with one of the world-class photographers down there, and he used her as a model, and her picture was published all over the world. And when that happened, she came back home and she said, "Dad, I've been to places where Japanese women will never see, absolutely never see. My host father and his friend would take me everywhere they went, even to these big clubs where the women never see." He said, "I've seen things that Hollywood would give everything they've got to see, but I was a Rotarian student, and I could go, but women never get there." And one of them, of the first group, wanted to stay home. He liked beautiful music, and I had a good setup that he could play beautiful music and listen to. And he'd stay and listen to that all the time he could. He was a photographer by choice, and his position, he was probably in his early 20s when he came over. And when he went back to Japan, he'd come back and he'd call me on the phone. He'd say, "Dad, can I come home?" And he came back 3 or 4 different times and stayed with us. He eventually joined the church. And I had others that came, brought their families over to see me. You can't hate people like that. There's no way in the world you can do it. And I went back over there several years later and went with 2 returned missionaries, and we had a marvelous time. I went to places that I never figured I'd ever get a chance to see. But since then, I've had a chance to go back with the city of St. George over to Ibigawa marathons, and that has been wonderful. I haven't been able to go to the Philippines yet, but my daughter was taken when they found her name out. She lived clear down on the Bicol Peninsula, about 12 hours away from Manila, and she lived with a large family that by the name of Sorte, and they had a big business, lots of workers, but they took her separate, and when they did, they took her away from the family and let her see the tomb, Aguinaldo's grave, and MacArthur was a big name in the Philippines at that time. But Rotary has been a wonderful thing for me. I've seen and been and done things that I never would do. A welder never gets to do that kind of stuff in his business, but I've had the chance for that, and I appreciate it.